The topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Hey, hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization show. I'm your host, Ira Wolf, and I'm here with my co-host, Keith Campagna.
Hey everyone,
how you doing, Keith?
How are we? You doing well, thanks, Ira.
Good. So what's been going on in your world this week?
Well, prepping this week for next week's Candy event and the EREs, which really puts a lot of focus on the candidate engagement experience with regards to recruiting and seeing how companies are coming to terms with the new reality that's in front of them, working with other people.
Yeah, and ERE, just for everybody's reference out there, is electronic recruiting. Can't remember what it is.
Yeah,
I know Todd, but it's got a great newsletter and comes every day. And yeah, so I guess we should know that. But yeah, ERE.
We've got a lot of
that up.
I got a lot of excitement feedback from the first show last week. It seems like we've kind of tapped on the shoulder of a lot of people. They're looking to learn more about what's going on out there. Everyone's pretty busy anymore with what's right in front of them. So,
yeah, we got and we've got our schedules filling up for October is actually booked, and most of November we got some exciting guests. We'll talk a little bit about more of them in the future. We do want to. I've too gotten a lot of good feedback. I want to personally thank everyone who tuned in last week and who's certainly there today. Just as a reminder, if you missed the episode or you want to catch last week's, then you can catch it on iHeartRadio. We're now live on demand on iHeart, so we're good to go there, and we'll be talking about that. But I don't want to put any more delay in here. Hey, Jason, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
I can. Hey, Jason Feifer. This is Ira, and I'm here with Keith Campagna, my co-host.
Thank you for your time.
Hey, no, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Hey, so just going to give a little bit of background to Jason's editor-in-chief of Entrepreneur Magazine, and I guess it was somewhere during the summer that I got a call from Jason, and he wrote a great article, why older people were trashing or trash young people. And we're going to find out why that happened, but I got to share this quick story. When Jason came on board, or when Jason called me or contacted me, and we first had our chat, and then I read the article. It was like, hey, this guy just threw me under the bus because he talked about these old fogies. I think the exact words were this dyspeptic fogies. Recurring theme and how old guys, keep trashing millennials and young people. The good news is I was thrown in with Joe Scarborough, who you might know from the MSNBC Morning Joe, and Ben Sass, Senator Ben Sass. So I felt honored to be included among those guys, except when I read the article, except when I got to the end. And then you talked about how I was the recovering millennial basher, which was good. But hey, Jason, it's an honor to have you as part of this, and we had a lot to talk about what what was behind that article, and how you found me, and especially going back to the history. You sort of wrote the article I wanted to always write, and I had pieces of it, but you did the research, so. So
let's
that's
start
great. There. Yeah. So let's start there. And then I know you got a new book coming out. We want to talk about Mr. Nice Guy.
Awesome.
What that's about. So let's talk about the millennials. You said, when you called me, you said you were writing this history. You were curious about why, older generations keep trashing young people.
Yep.
What'd you find out? What prompted it, and what did you find out?
Well, what prompted it
very boringly, was a friend of mine who's an editor over at Medium and had asked me to do this. But the reason that he thought of me was because I have a podcast called Pessimist's Archive. Pessimist's Archive is a history of unfounded fears of innovation. So in each episode, we look back at the moment that a new piece of technology or innovation was introduced, and we try to understand why it freaked everybody out. Because the history, of course, of innovation is something new is introduced, people resist it greatly. Those resistors fail, and then the thing that everyone resisted becomes so commonplace that nobody ever has any idea that it was resisted to begin with. So everything that you use and see around you all the time was at some point very, very terrifying and worth resisting to the people that came before us. And that is everything from novels to recorded music to the car to the bicycle to chess to coffee. It goes on and on and on and on. And my point in doing this podcast is that if we can look backwards and see all of these fears, and we know now that all of these fears were simply unfounded, then that tells you that today's fears are unfounded as well. That if the people that today, the people who talk about the internet or social media or whatever, the iPhone is harming us in some kind of very dangerous and scary way, those are the same people who told you that the bicycle was going to make you go insane. And those people, the bicycle, were wrong, and today's people are wrong. I feel that very deeply. So anyway, because of that podcast that I do, my friend over at Medium thought that I would be great to tackle this idea that he wanted, which was to try to understand why old people always criticize young people. Of course, it's just simply the time passing simply refutes the argument, right? I mean, if the next generation was truly worse than the previous generation, and every generation says that, and therefore every generation is saying that the next generation is worse, if that was true, every generation would indeed become worse, and as a society, we would get worse and worse. But that's not true. We get better and better. We become smarter. We build greater. We develop more. We become, for all our faults as humanity today, we are actually safer and kinder than we were in the past. We improve every generation. We don't become worse. So I wanted to understand what was going on behind that.
Yeah, and in my book, which the title of this show is based on, which is Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization. I wrote that in 2008, and I did trash the millennials as that young generation at that point, and maybe they just maybe at that point they deserved it, but they were going to grow up and become real people and productive adults. But one of the things that I always talk about is that. People think generation gaps are new. They think they started with the baby boomers. And I've got a magazine cover of Life magazine, May 17th, 1968. And, on that, it talks about this young generation, this up-and-coming generation who's promiscuous, rebellious,
Yep.
Lazy, idealistic. And, that seems to be where most people went back to. But in you're tracing it, you're going back, I can't remember who it was, but it was all the way back to 600 BC. And then you had a great quote from Seneca. It was a little bit more current, like first century AD, whereas like our young men have growth slothful.
Right.
Their talents are left idle. There's not a single honorable occupation for which they will toil night and day. I mean, that could have been written yesterday, other than this Shakespearean language. But
sure, and finding examples of that is very, very, very easy. Yeah, I mean, you said people think the generation gap is new. People think everything is new, and it's not. Everything is old. everything that you think is new is actually old. We just repeat ourselves over and over again. So, and it's like it's so easy. Really, you just scratch the surface of history and you find people saying and doing exactly what we do now. It's slightly different form. Like you said, the language sounds a little different, but the thought is the same. And so I mean, that was the very first thing that I did in this piece. Me and a research assistant that I used, we just contacted tons and tons of academics and basically asked them, of their time. So reach out to the classics person, reach out to the medieval person, and say, how at the time that you are familiar with, were those people articulating some level of distrust or disinterest in the next generation? And then they would just write us back with their with their evidence. Yeah, I mean, it's because it just shows up everywhere. All you have to do is ask. So I gathered a ton of that stuff, and then I started calling some folks to try to really understand what was going on. And one of my very favorite academics is a guy named Andrew Rabin down at the University of Louisville. He's a scholar on sort of medieval era, and I call him whenever I'm looking for some perspective on what life was like in a familiar but very different way. Because the Anglo-Saxons are of course directly connected to sort of American European culture, but their environment and their social structure was so different, and yet so many things are exactly the same. So he had a really wonderful observation that I ultimately kind of anchored the piece around, which was so he was telling me that that one of the things he found and had actually just written a paper on was how children of the medieval era had been suing their parents over land, because land was passed down by generations, and there was a rule on how it was done. It's basically like once the male heir reaches a certain age, the land is passed down, and land was everything in that time. Land was social status, land was economic ability, land was everything. And there were lots of circumstances in which the parents were not passing the land down to the children, and so then the children would sue. And he could tell you all sorts of stuff about that, but the point that he made about it was it really is a nice, very simplistic way of looking at what's going on here, where the older generation is aware that once that the new generation replaces them. Like, it doesn't matter who owns the land just gets passed down. And if you are to give in to just the replacement, if you are to just say, well, my child can run this land the same way that I can run that land, then in a way you are admitting your own valuelessness. Right. And we don't. He pointed out that the next generation reminds us of our own mortality and of our replaceability, and we don't want to feel replaced. We want to feel very, very special. And he posited, and I agree with him, that part of the reason that we culturally always look down upon the next generation is because we don't want to see them as equal to us. We don't want to see them as a replacement to us, because if they're a replacement to us, then what are we?
Mm-hmm. So where do you fall on? Are you an older millennial or a young Gen X?
I'm right in that gray area. Yeah, so I was born in 1980, which technically makes me
you're right on the border.
I'm a little older than a millennial, which I think the cutoff is 82, but I certainly don't identify with Gen X. So I honestly have never identified with a generation.
Yeah, well, I can appreciate that, being the millennial trapped in the boomer body.
And I sit in the Generation X. Almost like I feel like I'm the middle child wanting to know what the big deal's about between the boomers and the millennials. Everyone's fine with me. Hey, I got a question for you. I love your comment about how if you were to look backwards and turn around and reflect on the past, fear really wound up becoming utterly worthless because of the progress that was made. In the context of the future of work, what do you think are maybe some of the bigger fears that the older generations have with the millennials and the Gen Xers, or maybe even the Gen Zs that are going to wind up being proved to be unfounded?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, I mean, one of them is I'd say the word entitlement is applied to millennials and probably to Gen Zers too, but Gen Zers aren't as deeply into the workforce as millennials are at this point. But, seen as entitled, these kids want to come in and they want to they expect to have whatever worthwhile careers and be respected and job whatever. I can't even properly represent this entitlement argument because I think it's just so ridiculous. But I think that what you'll there is. There's a falseness to it and there's a trueness to it, right? And I think that it's important to appreciate both. The trueness is that there will always, every generation will come in with some different perspective on the workplace, their own role in the workplace, and that perspective will then upset the prior generation who's been in the workplace longer, right? And so that is true, and I don't dispute that the younger generation comes in with perhaps different expectations formed by their own experiences and what they've seen of the economy as they grew up, and also the technology that's available to them. But what I think that the older generation completely misunderstands or forgets is that they did that too. That when they were the younger generation, they also came in with their own perspectives, and that upset the generation prior to them. So it's a cycle, and it continues to repeat itself. And if you are if you are in an older generation and you look at yourself and your generation and you say, okay, you know what? Maybe I did that too, and we turned out okay. That means that this younger generation is going to do the same.
Hey, Jason, we're coming up against the break. We're going to take about a 2-minute break here. So hang on there. We're going to come back. Keith and I have a load of questions. And for anyone who's interested in calling in, the number is 561-623-9429. That's 561-623-9429. Baby boomers, hey, call in and tell us what you're thinking. Millennials, do the same. And Gen X. You don't want to forget Keith and his gang.
The middle children.
So we'll be right back.
Behind everything you're searching for is something you're actually looking for. When you search with the Real Yellow Pages, you get more than a contractor. You get a whole new curb appeal. It's not just getting directions to a dry cleaner with YP.com. It's rescuing an old favorite from the back of the closet. And it's more than finding a locksmith with YP.com on your mobile. It's getting to sleep in your own bed. Whatever it might be, there are more ways to search and more ways to find exactly what you're looking for with the Real Yellow Pages, YP.com, and YP.com on your mobile, only from AT&T.
What's up, everyone? This is Keith from the Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization show, powered by JobVite. JobVite knows career paths are made by people, not by open job requisitions. JobVite's platform ties recruitment marketing directly to applicant tracking and onboarding, creating continuous candidate engagement that effectively connects recruiters with qualified passive candidates. Used by over 50,000 recruiters placing over 1 million jobs, JobVite's platform impacts every company in every industry. Check us out at jobvite.com.
Listen carefully. Up to 9 out of 10 job candidates visiting your company career page leave before completing an application. You heard that right. 90% of candidates who want to apply for a job at your company don't. That's just plain crazy, especially in today's tight labor market. Candidate experience matters. Stop turning candidates away. Let Success Performance Solutions help. Call us at 800-803-4303 or register at successperformancesolutions.com/W4CY. Schedule a no-obligation consultation and get special access to insider tips to recruit faster and hire smarter.
Hey, welcome back to another segment of Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization. We're here with Jason Feifer today, from editor-in-chief of Entrepreneur Magazine, talking about why older generations are trashing young people. Seems to be a ritual going back
Historic proportions.
Yeah, absolutely. Going back centuries. Anyone who's interested in calling, number is 561-623-9429. Hey, Jason and Keith and I were chatting at the break, and he had mentioned, Jason had mentioned earlier, about the bicycle, how that was going to ruin society. And we got on to talking about the radio in the early 1920s about that, and how that was going to disrupt families, or not the radio, the telephone.
Yeah, I mean, they said it about the radio too.
Yeah. But about the telephone, that hey, we won't have to go visit grandma anymore. We can just pick up the phone and call her.
Right.
Yeah.
And,
the next episode it should drop hopefully next week, that I've been working on for Pessimist's Archive. My podcast is about the novel, which was very, very steeply resisted for all sorts of reasons. They said that it would make women go insane and infertile, that it was going to turn boys into criminals. This is the thing that today we think of as the highest form of art, but it just goes to show a couple hundred years back, anything that you value was seen as insane and scary.
Yeah, and I'm sure this will upset many of my peers, my colleagues. I'm an older baby boomer, and but when you talk about entitlement, it's interesting because people talk about don't touch Medicare, don't touch Social Security, and now that I'm in that group, I hope that's true.
Right.
But the reality is that we feel that we're entitled because we contributed for 30, 40, 45, 50 years. And yet the expectancy was that we'd live till we were 70, 75. And now, my mother just celebrated her 95th birthday last week. And she's not alone. I mean, there's a lot of 80, 90, and even 100-year-olds that are out there that are collecting at 30, 40 years past what the expectation was. And that, not only is that legitimately an entitlement, but, people work for 40 years and now they're retired for 50.
Yeah.
That's a problem. So there's entitlement goes both ways.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's very different. I totally sympathize with that. I mean, you were promised something, you followed the rules, and then the economics of it changed. But you don't feel on an individual level the economics of it changing should impact your ability to get out what you were promised. I totally sympathize with that. The problem, of course, with that, it goes to this is a completely different conversation. But we just don't have political will in this country to make any kind of hard decision at all, and so everything just gets to the breaking point. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. We'll stay off topic. We'll stay off of that one. Why don't we? But maybe looking at it from a different angle. Me personally, when I see the disruption that today's technology has brought to, the world in general, it really does make the younger generation. Or do you agree with me here that the younger generations are just sitting with so much more knowledge and so much more access to information, where if you have a decade or maybe 2 decades of age difference, the millennials and the Gen Xers are really gaining ground on the older generations, which might cause for more concern by the older generations. They're resistant to change. They want to keep the status quo, which is ultimately what the politicians do. They don't want change too much. They like everything staying the same. You mentioned J.C. Norman in your article. She talks about how
Jace Norman. Yeah.
Jace Norman, yeah. She talks about how there's just too much noise and not enough substance out there.
Yeah.
You think that the older generations are getting caught up in their own hoopla?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, one of my favorite examples of all time is from this 1896 article about the bicycle. So the bicycle at the time was pretty new, and it was altering people's behavior and also altering the consumer behavior. And so this reporter in 1896 goes and talks to a whole bunch of people who are impacted by the bicycle, which includes bar owners, because people are drinking more water instead of sitting around drinking beer because they're riding the bicycle, and people who make shoes because bicyclists are buying different shoes. And then there's this guy who sells fancy felt hats, and the fancy felt hat guy is not selling as many fancy felt hats because people are buying these bicycling caps, and he is very, very upset and proposes that there will be a law passed that every cyclist needs to buy 2 felt hats every year to compensate him for the loss of felt hats, right? And we laugh at that, and we should laugh at that. But I propose to you that we do some version of that all the time.
Yep.
Everybody, if you are in a job and you have seen some kind of change coming and you say, you know what, I'm not going to embrace that change, I'd rather continue to do the old thing, then you are the fancy felt hat person who's demanding that there will be a law passed. Like, you have to evolve, period. And I know that gets harder as you get older, and it's easy for me to say at age 38, but but frankly, it's just true. And if you feel threatened by young people and their new technology coming into the workplace, but then that's your own damn fault, because you have the ability to learn that technology too. It's not just the domain of young people. You can keep up with it. It's just a choice of whether or not you want to.
Have you seen, Jason, that's a really good point. Have you seen how, do the younger people step up and try to engage the older generations and say, don't worry about it, let's work this out? Or does it go the other way, where someone representing the older generation says, maybe we should step closer to the middle here and help these kids out? Have you seen anything?
Yeah,
Any
I think that you see a lot of everything, right? So you will see older and younger people who are interested in learning from the other generation, and you'll see older and younger people who see the other generation as a foreign species and are not interested in engaging with them. And I think that the smartest leaders create an environment in which those two generations are able to find and understand the value that each other brings. Younger people are very well aware of their limitations, right? I mean, they know some things and they don't know other things, and they are looking to learn. I mean, the one thing that I feel that I see all the time is that young people, they often have a lot of confidence about themselves, and no generation has ever had the number of tools available to them to help facilitate entrepreneurship or anything else, right? You just have all this stuff available to you, which is amazing. But they are also often very, very aware that counsel from somebody who has been in that industry or a long time is really useful. And you see examples of it across the board, from Airbnb, who brought in Chip Heath to the hospitality veteran to help out. And you just see these kinds of things all the time. And people, young founders of big companies turn to often their investors who are very experienced and have been around it. You do see it, and I think that a leader should be encouraging that as much as possible.
Hey, Jason, I know you got to hop off shortly, and we're going to be coming up against a break here a little bit. But I wanted to, and I really do appreciate you being on the show.
Oh yeah, thanks.
We're going to put the article up. It'll be on the blog. It'll be there'll be a link to it within the podcast. So for those who haven't had a chance to read it yet, you must do it. But I know you're pretty excited. I guess in 6 days you got your book coming out.
Yeah,
Mr.
Crazy.
Nice Guy.
Uh-huh.
So we Keith and I were reading the excerpt a little bit up online. But why don't you tell us what it's about? You wrote it with your wife, I believe.
Yeah, I did. I wrote it with my wife. It's a romantic comedy. It's a novel. It's about two people who each week sleep together and then critically review each other's performance in a magazine. So yeah, it's a great premise, and it's set in the media world in New York, and it's actually pretty relevant in a way to the conversation that we're having right now, because it's about these two sex columnists, but it's really set in a world of transition in media, where you have all these young upstarts who are coming in to a industry that used to be very, very exclusive and the domain of big personalities, and that's gotten shaken to its core because of the economics of media. And so you have a couple of these old editors who walk around like they're gods, and then you have a bunch of young, underpaid 22-year-olds, and that there creates a clash and an interesting culture clash. And I experienced that myself coming into media at the age that I did at a moment of transition, and we tried to really reflect that in the book. But it's a lot of fun. It comes out on October 16th, and you can get it wherever you get books. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, your local independent bookstore, audible.com, and it's called Mr. Nice Guy.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Yeah, and absolutely good luck for it. It's an exciting time. I know a year ago at this point mine was just starting to come out. You can get it on a pre-order up on Amazon as we checked it out, from there. Yeah. Jason, again, really appreciate you taking some time. Any closing words, thoughts, advice that you can provide our listeners?
Sure. Well, I would summarize it very quickly. Do not fear the new. Try to understand how it fits into your world, and don't fear that it will replace something. Nothing replaces, everything integrates. So embrace, learn how to integrate, and let's all move forward.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It sounds like that. I don't know if you realize, but my TED Talk that I did 2 years ago was called "Make Change Work for You."
Nice.
Love it. It fits well in line with that. So again, I appreciate very much. We've been listening to Jason Feifer, editor-in-chief at Entrepreneur Magazine. We've been talking about the millennials, why older people keep trashing young people. We'll be putting the link up to that article on the podcast, on the blog. And you'll be able to download it there. Make sure you go up to Amazon or any bookstore and order or pick up a copy of Mr. Nice Guy. And thanks very much, Jason. We're coming up against our break here, and we're going to sign off in just a minute. For those who want to call in after the break and talk about baby boomers, millennials, or anything else, future of work, automation, AI, robots, give us a call at 561-623-9429.
The YP.com website is your local search engine. If you're looking for a good restaurant, it can help you find the right one nearby with ratings and reviews. Or if your car breaks down, you can use the YP app to find the closest repair shop. Or maybe you're just looking for something to do on a Friday night. Well, it has great local coupons for all sorts of things in your area. No matter what, when, or where, if you're looking for something, YP Local Search can help you find it. So go to YP.com or download the app to search local, find local, and save local.
What's up, everyone? This is Keith from the Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization show powered by JobVite. JobVite knows career paths are made by people, not by open job requisitions. JobVite's platform ties recruitment marketing directly to applicant tracking and onboarding, creating continuous candidate engagement that effectively connects recruiters with qualified passive candidates. Used by over 50,000 recruiters placing over 1 million jobs, JobVite's platform impacts every company in every industry. Check us out at jobvite.com.
Listen carefully. Up to 9 out of 10 job candidates visiting your company career page leave before completing an application. You heard that right. 90% of candidates who want to apply for a job at your company don't. That's just plain crazy, especially in today's tight labor market. Candidate experience matters. Stop turning candidates away. Let Success Performance Solutions help. Call us at 800-803-4303 or register at successperformancesolutions.com/W4CY. Schedule a no-obligation consultation and get special access to insider tips to recruit faster and hire smarter.
Back, everybody, to the Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization show. Keith Capagna here with Ira Wolf. Ira, Jason was fantastic. It's amazing to see somebody.
He was outstanding. We're honored to have him as our guest here.
I can only imagine the number of perspectives that he has and he gets, and I've learned that once you have so many, if you get enough perspective, you just see things completely differently, and it fascinates me to for somebody like him to come in and say, fear nothing, because everything winds up working out for improvement. And yeah, there might be nuances, and there certainly have been bad ideas. But if you're out there listening, give us a call, 561-623-9429. Ira, one of the things I connected in terms of listening to Jason and my own experiences has to do with a company that I was working with, looking to hire, having hiring problems, a accounting firm. And the woman, the senior VP that I was talking to of HR, mentioned to me that they have the massive amount of their employees are 60 years or older, and then this huge gap, and then all of these younger millennials trying to establish relationships with clients. And her biggest challenge was that the older generation employees were holding on. and they weren't willing to help. And I think that ties into something you said earlier about how some individuals want to retire faster, others are taking their time. So it seems as though this is an uphill battle for some companies out there, or some people out there.
Well, and things got, not only when we talk about how fast things changes, but, 2008, it's 10 years ago, the markets crashed, the economy was terrible. We had a very long recovery coming out of that. And a lot of the baby boomers, they were expecting that 10,000 baby boomers are going to, turn 65 every day. And that meant they were going out of the workforce. And as it turned out, they didn't leave the workforce because they had to work to replenish the retirement funds. A lot of people are about to retire and they realize, what am I going to do? Because certainly baby boomers aligned their purpose in life with work. And I'm probably one of them. I mean, people continually ask me, am I going to retire? And I just keep remaking myself, and I'm having fun, and I'm using technology. Something that Jason said right at the end, and I know he had to get off, so I didn't bring it up. But you would ask the questions about millennials, mentoring, teaching, coaching, older people, and vice versa. Because there's a lot of knowledge and time. When my mother who said, last week, 2 weeks ago, she turned 95, and my father-in-law were here in June, I pulled out my Oculus glasses, my VR, my virtual reality. And, my mother's, for 95, I mean, she does emails on a regular basis, and she at least carries a mobile phone. She only calls out on it. She says it doesn't allow her to call in. But my father-in-law, the closest thing to modern technology that he has is a cordless phone at home. That's the wireless in his world. But we put them both, I put the glasses on both. I had to help them a little bit in figuring out how to use the hand control. So that was a little bit entertaining to get that so they can turn it on. And I actually recorded them. And my mother had the lenses on for, or the headphones, their headpiece on, maybe about a half hour, 40 minutes. And I had no idea where my wife's father was going to go. Jerry was going to go with it. And his name is also Jerry. We put it on. He was there like an hour and 15 minutes, and it kept going from one scene to another. So, that's a good example of, you take people that really are not comfortable with technology. Both grew up, actually were born before the Great Depression. Right. So they've seen, the end of a world war, a couple other wars. They've seen disruption. They've seen everything that, I've certainly seen, and including you, and lots of experiences. And you brought them into an experience that most people have never had. Right. I mean, even today, most people have not experienced virtual reality, and yet they did. Now, what's the application for that? From their concern, I wish they were easier to use, and I wish both of them had wireless internet at home. I mean, my father-in-law doesn't have it at all. My mother doesn't have wireless set up, but that they could use the glasses because they not only they can visit anywhere, they can do anything, they can watch movies. Yep. It's entertaining. It keeps them stimulated, and so there's so many applications for some of these things. They go, what's the purpose of virtual reality or augmented reality? And then we go to our world, recruiting and staffing and HR. At the conference last week, one of the people from the manufacturing company came up and said, did I know of any companies that were doing a good job at training people, using virtual reality? Because they got these very sophisticated machines. Yep. They're dispersed around the world, but around the country especially, and they needed people to. They need a way to train people on the spot.
Right.
And virtual reality is going to be the solution for that.
But it also speaks to what I think is the macro element here, and it's really the other side of technology, which is people. And you look at how these younger generations are coming up with literally we're cyborgs at this point, right? Ask somebody to take their phone away from them for a day and see how easily that's done. Not to say that they won't, but it won't be done easily. And you recognize these level of efficiencies and this access to information that the younger generations have, and they seem much more advanced than the older generations, and they've got that sense of understand. The way they learn is enhanced. They could sit down and you put an older person in the workforce in front of a new computer program, and it's almost a deer in headlights. Maybe not all of them, right? But for the younger generations, they're like, okay, what does this look like? Where's my familiarity? And they start moving faster. But yet, so again, there's this notion of the younger generation could certainly help the older generations. And it fascinates me to learn from small businesses and large corporations how they're starting to blend these generations together.
Yeah, and I think even you and I need to be careful. I mean, we sort of covered all the bases. We got a boomer here, we got a Gen X. Jason was on the verge of millennial. Through all these conversations, but we need to be careful with the stereotypes. I mean, because my company, Success Performance Solutions, we do a lot of pre-employment testing, and one of the fastest growing areas is on reasoning skills, cognitive skills. And it's not how smart someone is, it's how quickly people can learn new things. And I got to tell you, it's pretty much across the board. I mean, that there are some older workers that people want to test to see, why they're struggling. But there's a lot of young workers that are struggling with the pace of change and all the new technologies that are come up. And a lot of people know, all generations, they know how to use the phone. And boy, their thumbs move much faster than mine when it comes to typing. But if you ask them how to access something, or if they lose an app, or something's not working properly, they're pretty clueless. Yeah. And I think that's the challenge. It's that people know how to use devices. They know how to they know how to ride a bike. We were talking about the bike. Right. They know how to use a telephone. They know how to use a typewriter. People know how to use a computer. Right. But they don't necessarily know how to I don't want to say fix it, but
well, it's almost
change with
it goes back to something I had a conversation about a week or two ago with someone else called dilemma solving. There's something that, there's problem solving, then there's dilemma solving. And I just thought of this many years ago. I was at a dinner, and I forgive his name. It wasn't the most popular Philadelphia college basketball coach, but it was a guy who everyone in the room knew. I'm not a Philly guy, so I didn't know him. And he told a story about when he was growing up, he had a flat tire, and it was pouring rain, and he had to call his dad, who really wasn't the kind of dad who
sounds like one of those commercials on the TV.
He didn't want to solve your problems, right? So he calls his father up in the middle of the night, pouring rain. His father gets out of bed, drives over, and he tells the story how his father pulls up as he's down at the wheel trying to. What happened was the rain had washed away the 5 lug nuts that were holding on the one wheel. Problem. So the father literally pulls up, rolls down his window, and he says to his son, "It seems to me you could put together a couple extra lug nuts from the other 3 wheels and get home." Rolled his window up and drove away. Right. Just like that. And I think there's that experience factor of knowing that you could sit down and work with a piece of, whether it be something in a blue-collar environment, manufacturing environment, or digital technology environment. There's that idea that you can sit down and learn and take time doing it.
Well, it's a good example. Even changing a tire. What happens if you get a flat? And I think over the generations, it became that you wanted your kids to be safe. And you didn't teach them how to change the tire. you taught them how to call AAA
Yep.
or somebody to get them there. And there's good reasons for that. And certainly having some young kids out in the back road and, some not only in a safe location, but you just don't know who was going to get stopped and kidnapped or harassed.
Fear.
So,
and then we go back to Jason's element of fear, which I speak
but
to.
But there's a lot of basic things, and certainly knowing how to change a tire doesn't make somebody a good or a bad person.
Yep.
But there are a ton of skills, like that keep changing. Hey, it's hard to believe we're actually coming up almost. We got a couple minutes left today. We've been talking a lot about millennials, older generations, young generations, change. There's so many else things going on. I just wanted to bring up. I'm actually speaking again tomorrow and next week. I'm in Fort Worth at the Southwest Conference on Tuesday, and we're talking about recruiting in the age of Googlization up at Kalahari tomorrow. Talking to a property management group. Every industry is dealing with that, and we were talking before the show went on just about Google. How the age of Googlization was my timing was so good with that because Google's certainly disrupting the workplace with Google for Jobs. And many other features. The online course that I developed for Google for Jobs hopefully will be online in a week or so. Was busy putting some of the copy. If anybody's interested, just you can email me or you can go up to my website, successperformancesolutions.com. And you can click on any of the replies or even chat and say, hey, I'd like the link to sign up for that. There's some discounts and some other information that's there. And you can read about that online. But getting your jobs, and I know a lot of people still use Indeed and even ATS, JobVite, which is a sponsor. We're really grateful for them having them on board. But there's a lot moving on, a lot changing. So keep in tune with that.
And speaking of JobVite, we're now asking people. We're about to start collecting data for our Recruiter Nation national report. And so
it's a great report. I use the data all the time in mine. That.
We're one of those companies that get it. The part of the experience that I love being a JobVite is that we're really well established as a thought leader, not just in technology but in recruitment. So being able to get that information, not just from the, I think they placed 1 million jobs. 1 million jobs have been placed through JobVite software, but ultimately the knowing that we're looking for what's going on out there. So, for those of you out there listening, take a look at jobvite.com. We're asking people to fill out information, fill out forms, and let us know what's going on. So not only can we make the world a better place one job at a time, but we can help the rest of the world realize where they are. And you know how it goes. It's all in the data.
Yeah, and I mean the amount, and it goes into some of the conversations we're going to have in the next couple of weeks, just about big data and people analytics. We hope we're going to have some guests that talk about that and the ethics of that. But I know I use that sales funnel that you had all the time, and I always impress about people. This wasn't done in 200 or 300 companies and have 1,000 people in it. I mean, in the statistics that we had, it's 50 million job seekers and 10 million applications. It's just incredible, which really gives it some substance. We want to talk. It's our second show. Our third show next week is going to be. Our guests are going to be Nicolette Hawking and Rebecca Weaver. They have a company, HR Uprise.
And I reached out to them. I wanted to get them on the show. There's just so much going on with regards to the Me Too movement.
Yeah, especially after the hearings last week and the elections coming up.
And ladies and gentlemen, we want to be able to give you what we feel is what's real, and whether or not that's through analytics or whether that's through people. We're gonna bring some really good guests coming, and I know that Nicolette and Rebecca are excited. I caught up with them last week when they were in New York for some other speaking engagements, and look forward to next week. We're gonna have a lot to offer, and I'm excited about them coming on the show.
Yeah, and then in the future we've got Janine Woodworth from JobVite. She's going to be talking about lessons learned from consulting with talent acquisition organizations. We've got Robbie Goulin from Engage. We had a great conversation Monday. I wish I would have recorded it. about the AI's impact on recruiting. Just crazy stuff going on. That's really good. And then the following week, we're talking about recruiting, marketing. The end of November, we got another great guy, Phil Struzula from NetWave Hire. They're doing a really phenomenal job with inbound marketing.
Yep.
So, I mean, it sounds like we're doing sales here,
right?
which for recruitment. And then I've got Eric Meyer. He's a cool guy, really good guy. He's an attorney in Philly, and he uses social media a lot. Yep. And it's interesting for an attorney doing it. But we're going to be talking about that on social media.
So check us out at the Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization.show.com. You can look Iron up on LinkedIn, and we can, if you have a suggestion for a guest or a topic, don't be shy.
If you want to be a guest, just let us know. If you've written the book, got some thoughts, call in. We do record it live. The shows are then on demand on iHeartRadio. And I don't know. You have any final words for this week?
No. Looking forward to seeing everybody down in Kissimmee, Florida next week. There's so much energy that comes with these conferences in terms of how to make life easier for everyone who's trying to improve their lot in life by advancing their career. So looking forward to it.
Safe travels. We'll have a lot to report next week. Back, you'll be at the ERE. I'm going to be out at the Southwest Conference out in Fort Worth. A lot of good people. Until next week, I hope everybody has a safe travels, good week, productive week. And this is Ira and Keith from the Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization Show.
Take care.